I'm kind of intimidated after speaking after Dr. Chandra. I'm not easily intimidated, as my wife will tell you. And I need to say this before I kick off. I am not a scientist, although I'm flattered when Dr. Chandra says it doesn't matter, you are, how do you call me, an amateur scientist? He ended with something I wanted to start. So if you were in the late 16th century, and you would tell people in the street or in a restaurant or, God forbid, in the Vatican, that we were on a globe, and that this globe went around the sun, and that there were other globes going around the sun, or going further, that there may be other suns around, the best thing that would have happened would be to be treated as a madman, and the worst, of course, would be to get burnt at the stake. I think I talked about this once, about Giordano Bruno, who surprisingly, by the way, hence why we're interested in this, predicted the many world. He's the very first, Giordano Bruno, who got burned at the stake in 1600 exactly, on the 17th of February, to be precise. He was dragged out of the Vatican dungeons and burned because he suggested that there were many worlds with many living creatures on them. But today, of course, it's quite different. If you go in the street and say the same thing, it's totally normal, I presume, I hope. Anybody doesn't think it's normal? And that's fine. I mean, you are among the position that we have reached, that we all accept and understand. And however, and here is the problem. If you would go out in the street at random, and you don't fall on a theoretical physicist or a Professor Chandra or somebody like him, and you say, there could be many worlds. In fact, there could be parallel worlds. In fact, there could be an infinite number of worlds. In fact, there could be an infinite number of people, and you yourself, in other worlds. And you have an infinite number of histories. And there's an atom on your left arm, perhaps, that when it moves, it's moving another atom somewhere else in the other part of the cosmos. We call this entanglement, by the way. In the new physics, which has been going on for the last 40 years or so, which is, of course, quantum mechanics. Now, I'm not a physicist, and I won't bore you with the details here, but you would probably be taken as a madman these days, or at least most people are on the street. And if you say this in the tube, they throw you out. And the worst thing is they call an ambulance, and they have you carted to the next psychiatric hospital. But if you say such things to physicists today, especially theoretical physicists, and even cosmologists and others, you're in good company. Because we actually live in a universe that is, in a sense, like two universes. We, sitting here. You're all made of the same stuff. You're made of the same stuff. And that stuff is atoms and subatomic particles. Here's the one I like to say, because it's all new to me, by the way. So if some of you, we have a theoretical physicist here by any chance, oh, thank goodness. But I had to go through a grueling 2 years of updating myself. This is how I see it. I had to update myself because I'm one of these guys that grew up in a very skeptical, down-to-earth, nuts and bolts profession. I'm a construction engineer. I'm Joe the Builder. Well, a bit more than Joe the Builder. But. And to me, anybody, especially when I'm the guy who developed the Orion correlation theory. I'll introduce you to this in a minute. But for me, it was a bit of a problem, because what I had discovered was totally against the established consensus of Egyptologists. And it's nothing extraordinary, really. I mean, I just said 3 stars look like 3 pyramids on the ground. But to me, the utter surprise at the time, I remember I gave early talks here, the utter surprise was Egyptologists, archaeologists, in fact, everybody who had the ist at the end of his profession fell on my head. And very much in this country, because I published a book which hit the #1, as you were saying. It was a #1 bestseller. And the BBC did a documentary. And the next thing, hell broke loose. Hell broke loose. I had the whole academic world on my back. I thought they'd be pleased, but they weren't. Especially the Egyptologists. They were very, very angry with me. How dare do, I mean, apart from being an outsider. And it's been debated, and now we're 25 years down the road, and I've had enough of debating. Thank goodness, as you'll see in a minute, the matter has been closed by an Italian university. I'll tell you in a minute. But there was I, totally resistant to anything more than these monuments being a sort of religious idea that they wanted to build some sort of heaven on earth. For those who are not familiar with this theory, anybody not familiar with it? Don't disappoint me. Who is not? You all know the theory. Really? For those who may not be familiar, I'll go very quickly. It'll take me about 5 minutes, just to get you in the picture of what this Orion correlation thing, and why did it make such a fuss? And why are we going to talk about cosmology and astronomy and all these things now? So, I think I can work it with this. Let's see. No. Went backwards. Right. I'm showing this because I like to do a little game. Some of you have been in my talks before, so don't get too bored with this. But it seems to me that there are 3 kinds of people on this planet, apart from the Macs and the Windows. Right? And the people who wear Speedos at the beach and those who wear shorts, right? I say this because my daughter cringes. I wear Speedos occasionally. I've realized there's 2 kinds of people, yeah? Okay, well, there are 3 classes. That's, by the way, Da Vinci who said this. Those who see, they see things. Those who see when they are shown, and those who don't see. I think all of us have been through parts of our lives where sometimes we do see things, sometimes we're shown things and we don't really see them, and sometimes we don't see at all. I'll show you 2 things that for some strange reason, let's see, it wasn't seen. And when it's seen, it's one of those strange things. Things are there in, what's his famous phrase? A secret in plain sight. And one of them, I think, we have one of the top engineers in France, by the way, my friend George Commander, who we've known each other for 35 years. We worked in Saudi Arabia together. He's come from Paris. And I think you'll know what, whoops. It's not me. No, I show this guy because he's the 3 of them, you know. He's still trying to see things that I won't mention his name, poor fellow. Well, this is one of them that I use very often in my talk, and some of you have seen it, but I enjoy doing this one because it's a true story. I happened to be in Riyadh in the year 1981 during the reign of King Khaled. And there was a commotion in town, and my secretary, I had a Sudanese secretary, who came up utterly confused and said, I heard that they closed the airport and the travel agents will not sell us tickets. I wanted to go to fly and buy a ticket to go to Jeddah, I think. And everybody was wondering what happened. My God, maybe a coup d'etat, something got wrong. But what it turned out was something rather odd. The king of Saudi Arabia was about to board this is a standard, I'm not quite sure what plane it is. A TriStar? Standard TriStar. And he was about to board the royal flight. And usually with the kings of Saudi Arabia, he's followed by what we call a mutawa. He's a sort of religious man who holds the Quran and a beard, and he recites the Quran all the time. And this mutawa said, we can't go on this flight because there is the Christian cross on the airplane. Now, you may or may not know this, but the Christian cross is utterly forbidden, or any other symbol of religion is forbidden in Saudi Arabia. If you arrive, I don't know if it's still like this. Yeah. If you land in Saudi Arabia at an airport and you're wearing a cross, they will ask you to take it off, or may confiscate it. It's true. So there you are, and everybody stopped and said, "Where is this cross? I mean, what is he seeing?" And he said, "It's there on the plane. I mean, I see it. It's. Do you see it? I know you do. Huh? Well, you don't. I hope you don't. No. Okay. Well, look carefully. Look carefully. No? Still don't see it? Look between the S and the A. Right. Now everybody sees it, right? That's it. That's it. Everybody. You see it? That's it. And when he said this, everybody saw it. Everybody went, ah, no, they went, woo. Can't go on this plane. And the king, believe it or not, asked for all crosses removed from planes, tickets, travel agencies, napkins, plastic cups, and they did that. And what they did was very simply, Michael, to just change the A. It's true. It's a true story. But it's one of these strange examples that there it is, until this crazy Mutawa, who's reciting the Bible, the Quran, sees it. And the reason he sees it is that he sees an image in ground. He doesn't see the letters. He can't read Roman letters. And so he thinks the white is what is the letter. It's, you know, when you bring two champagne glasses together and you see a face and... Okay. That is the phenomena. But I'm going to show you another one, which I have a lot of fun with this at airports, which I did coming from Malaga. I annoyed the British traveler because he was holding a British passport. Now, I presume most of you are British here? No?
We're very international.
Well, okay, most of you, right? And I presume most of you have a British passport. Well, say yes. I want yes here. Where are the positive ones?
We're interrupting a story.
You're spoiling my story. No. Okay. Now, on the British passport, right on the cover, is something drawn. When I ask people, and they're carrying their passports, and, you know, I ask them, how you're British, and you know how the British are when they're traveling. I mean, who's talking to me and all this business. But I said, no, it's a little test I do, and how long you've had the passport? I said, 20 years. Okay, well, what's on it? What's on it? And you'll find out of 10, that's my analysis of this after doing it so many times, that on average, out of 10, we remember that there is a kind of coat of arms. And there is the unicorn. Unicorn, yes, that's correct. And there is a lion, yes, that's a lion. And then there is some sort of coat of arms. And that's maybe 2 we remember, we'll know. The majority, then you say, well, what else? And you may get 1. I don't know, any of you is the one? No? Well, there is 2 phrases written in French. Yeah, one. Well, it's usually the foreigners who get it. You know? It's 2 phrases in French, not in English. One says Dieu est mon droit, which means God and my right. And the other one, which is the funny one, the interesting one, is honi soit qui mal y pense. And in, I'll put it as politely as possible, in English, it is damn who thinks bad of this. The Americans would say something else, but I don't want to say it in public. And they're stunned, you know, in French. I mean, we're British, and there is and it is, in fact, the motto of your monarchy, of your kingdom. It's amazing how people don't know this, and they carry the passport. Then you say, well, where does the story come from? Somebody, who is the one who knows it? One. No, amazing. Well, the story is that Edward III goes to the ball. Well, there's somebody who seems to know it. And there's a young lady of the court. She's actually the Duchess of Kent. And her garter has slipped to her ankles. And she doesn't know what to do. And everybody is noticing. And there's murmur around the hall. And the king walks in and realizes that she's got her garter down, and he goes up to her and helps her put it on again. And everybody's shocked, and he turns around and says, "On y soit qui mal y pense." You can do this with 2 fingers, by the way. But there you are. So I saw something that I would have assumed that everybody should have seen it. It's one of those bizarre things. And yet, it's one of those. I happen to be the guy. I'm going to die wondering why it's me.
Hey, Robert, just put the punchline in. He says, "Honey, your silk stocking is hanging down." Honey, swatty bloody fast.
Okay. Right, that's another one to add. But that one I didn't know. Okay, I have to admit. And it formed the order of the garter, which, of course, is the order of the queen. But voila, that's our king. There you are. You can see it better here. There's your passport, just in case you don't believe me. Because, of course, there's something else. I could have told you a fib here, right? I could have invented this story. So I'm showing you the evidence, and I will quote Groucho Marx, who's about my age here. You know, Groucho Marx with a cigar, with the Marx Brothers.
Look at all the same, does he?
Huh? And he said something during a conference. He said, "Do you believe what I say or what you see with your own eyes?" There it is. Because I've learned in this business of mine, in any business, it should be that maybe we shouldn't always accept what we hear. We tend to accept because it's an authority, or it is an academic, or it is Mr. Trump. I don't want to bring Theresa May in it, but they do say things, and we think, yeah, you know, but sometimes we want to see it with our own eyes. But anyway, here it is. I'll go very quickly through the motions. Whoops. You know this theory, but I want to refresh your memory.
Very well, so feel free to elaborate.
Yeah, okay. Well, basically, there is 3 pyramids on the ground at Giza, 2 very large ones, one a bit smaller than the others, and they seem, well, the 2 large ones run on a diagonal. If you throw a line across their apex, you miss the 3rd one. It seems to be offset to the left, right? You see it. I mean, I didn't invent this. And being me, and I happened to be working at the time in Saudi Arabia, it annoyed me because I could see, as somebody accustomed to engineering plans, that I could see 2 buildings that looked 3 buildings, but 2 almost the same size, looked very similar on a line. It seems to be a plan. But why would they have a little one offset to the left? And it bugged me. You know this feeling, oh, there's another one here. I can tell you that this, oh yes. I mean, most of you won't notice, but I would like to go there and kind of push it a bit, you know. It's a bit annoying, you know. And when you're dining at somebody's home and on the other side of the table on the wall there is, you know, I mean, you keep looking at it and, you know, and you hope the host goes and have a coffee so you could go and, you know. It's one of those annoying things. We want things straight. We want this little pyramid, first of all, to be of the same size as the other, because it didn't fit the consensus that the 3rd pyramid was built by a pharaoh who was not as powerful as the other 2. Now, first of all, how do we know this? And why would he advertise it? I mean, why would he tell the whole world forever and ever and ever that I am not as powerful as my 2 other friends who built pyramids? Because it isn't a small pyramid. It's small when you put it next to the 2 others. But in fact, it's 60 meters tall. It's a very, very large pyramid. When you put it next to the 2 others, it's dwarfed. So had he put it somewhere else, about 10 miles away, he would have been the big pharaoh. But no, he wanted to tell the whole world that he was not as powerful as the other 2. There you go. Or he died, he knew that he was going to die early. That doesn't work for me. What works for me is that there is a plan. And that's what stuck in my mind. And I remember discussing this with friends, and we have engineers, structural engineers, planners, and they all felt the same way. There's some reason. And I'll go very quickly. You go to the pyramid text. I said, is there anything written in these monuments, or did they write anything about these pyramids that can tell us why? I mean, maybe there is an explanation. Well, amazingly, the pyramids are totally mute. The Giza pyramids do not have inscriptions. That's another big mystery about these monuments, because the Egyptians loved writing. You go in Egypt, you go in temples, you go in museums here in London, and you see their artifacts, and they got inscriptions everywhere. They just love putting inscriptions. And yet, in their biggest monument, if you go and visit the pyramid, any of you seen the pyramid on location? Yeah, if you? Well, you know very quickly that this monument does not have inscriptions either outside or inside. There is apparently graffiti in some of the chambers. I'll mention this at the end, but it's very suspect. So why would you build a thing like that? The biggest ever monument built until they built the Empire State Building, and even then, in terms of mass, it's nowhere near the pyramid. You would mobilize your whole... I'm the king. I'm this very megalomaniac king, and I say, build me this pyramid, and they mobilize the nation for 3 decades, 5 decades, we don't know how long, and they whip people, and they build, and they lift stones that weigh about 30 tons, 50 tons, 70 tons in the chambers, and then the architect comes to me and said, we haven't put your name. I said, take this architect, and whoever says this, chop their heads and bring me another one, right? You've built me the greatest monument for me, and nobody's going to know about it? I mean, I'm Mr. Megalomaniac Ego. I'm not that megalomaniac, but if my publishers say, we're publishing your book, we're not putting your name on it, I'll say, hey, wait a minute. I mean, I went to all this trouble. It doesn't work. We expect to find, not just writing, we expect to find something. Bits of something, even a fraction or a molecule that implicated a human body. Zilch. Nothing. Ever. We did find little artifacts in one of their shafts. There is these secret shafts going on. I'll mention this, I think, when my brother talks. In fact, surprisingly, I found these artifacts that were found in the British Museum. I don't know if you remember, in 1993, made a huge scandal because another mad dog, an Englishman, went to Egypt and discovered shafts and took away artifacts. There are 3 small artifacts, the only ever artifacts found in the Great Pyramid. You think, wow, it's like finding the cross of Jesus here. It's like finding the signature of... anything that is found in this monument will be extremely precious. And yet, somehow, they got lost. And for 120 years, not only they got lost, but the British Museum, because we traced the story all the way to England, denied having even known about it. Anyway, they turned up in their vaults. It's a long story. If you want to read my book. But there you are. We have an anonymous monument on this planet, and we need to understand what's it doing there. I've lived 3 years I've lived 30 years when I was born in Egypt, my brother, and I left Egypt when I was 19. I've been there many, many times because my brother used to live there. But I dragged my wife in 2005 and said, let's go back. I want to write another book in front of the pyramids. I rented an apartment in front of the Great Pyramid. I opened my window of my office, and there she was. It was. Let me tell you about this monument, because I know it well. It's like it shouldn't be there. It's one of these annoying things. It's too big, too perfect, too anonymous, too mysterious. And it annoys you. And the funny thing about this, I began to realize that at first, wow, the pyramid there, I was going to have my coffee, and in the evening we'd sit outside, and marvelous. But eventually I stopped looking at it. And then I noticed the people in the street, and the taxi drivers, and the coffee vendors, they weren't looking at the pyramid. They live there. They'll look at the pyramid. Because every time you look at this monument, it bugs you. You spend the rest of the day saying who put it there, why they put it there, when they put it there, how they put it there. It's true. It is a giant question mark. That's what I call it. It is a question mark for our planet. And it's amazing that it hasn't been investigated properly. It's amazing that in 1993, we found secret doors at the end of shafts. I'm sure you've heard about this with the robot. And they still have not been opened. A bit like this Mars story. We don't get it. We don't get this catatonic blockage of people who do not want to pursue what is so exciting for most of us to pursue. If there is life on Mars, or if there is... This is one of these strange things, because we're blocked with cultural issues that somehow we prefer not to know subconsciously. We'd rather, or most of us know. It's like the Pope who doesn't want to know about certain things because it would... Well, never mind about it. Read my book, The Vatican Heresy. So, anyway, pyramid texts. Pyramid texts tell us that the kings of... Now, these are found in pyramids that belong to a generation afterwards, just one generation of the 5th dynasty. Pyramids of Giza are supposed to be 4th dynasty. And they tell us the king wants to go to the stars when he dies. And sure enough, we discovered in the 1960s that shafts within the pyramid, let's see if I can point to certain stars. There are those pointing to the circumpolar stars in the north. And these are very specific stars that are mentioned in the pyramid text. Not in the Great Pyramid, in texts of other pyramids that follow. And they tell us, that's it, in metaphoric terms, but some of them very direct. The king becomes a spirit entity and is sent to the stars. Now, it's not possible. You can't send the king to the stars. Strange enough, you might be interested in this. I read a book by Michio Kaku, which is called The Future Mind, The Future of the Mind. You should read this book. It's surprising what is going on as we speak now on research to do with neurology, to do with cosmology, to do with computers, to do with virtual reality, to do with artificial intelligence. And I had to get into all this because the question annoyed me. Can we send people to the stars? Surprisingly, well, we can today. We don't have the money, we don't have the technology, we have the science to do it. We can build a craft. It's going to be the size of London, but it can be done. But it will take us light years to reach, the nearest one, which is 4.5, if we travel at the speed of light, which we can't. It will take about 70,000 years, I think somebody worked it out, to reach the nearest. Am I right? Chandra, help. These are the enormous distances. But as you get into this, and we don't have to get into the mathematics. I failed my A-levels, right? So rest assured, I'm not good at mathematics. You don't have to get into mathematics, and you won't be able to. There's one thing that Carl Sagan, as I started researching, I thought maybe I can understand some of this stuff, and I can understand a bit about quantum mechanics, And apparently it takes about 15 years to go through the whole process of being able to understand if somebody like Dr. Chandra or Stephen Hawking explained something on the blackboard, because it's exotic mathematics. You haven't seen this stuff. This stuff is frightening. I mean, I never heard of certain signs. I mean, we know the plus sign, the minus sign, the multiplications. And no, they have some stuff that baffles you completely. We're out of it. If a theoretical physicist or a physicist speaks to another physicist, they will have to talk in terms of mathematics, because they both understand the language. They talk in terms, and one goes on the blackboard and says, "Here, listen, tuck, 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 tuck," like, and yeah, I get it. Yeah, okay. You're missing this. Okay, we can adjust it. But he can't talk to us like this. He can't. You won't get it. Yeah, that's it. So, and perhaps you have listened on the YouTubes, many of these YouTubes of various physicists and cosmologists, and I'm trying to remember Brian Greene and Brian Cox here do all this stuff on television, and they have to speak to us in metaphors. They tell you the Big Bang was an infinitesimally small particle that blew up, and it's like a bubble, and we live on the edge of a bubble, and it's expanding at super speed, and you kind of get it. It's metaphors. Well, the weird thing is when you read the pyramid text, they sound the same. They sound as if they're saying the same thing. Except we say Stephen Hawking knows what he's talking about because he knows mathematics. He is a scientist. And therefore what he's saying, I accept. But this is superstitious woo-woo people, and they're saying the same thing, but it's superstition. What if it isn't? What if it isn't? That's the question that has haunted me for a long, long time. What if it isn't? Is there a possibility? There's a possibility. And I was having a little conversation with Colin, because I had to update myself, and that's the idea of this talk, by the way, is to urge you perhaps that you might be interested to update yourself without the mathematics. Can't do it. But you can know what's going on about neuroscience, quantum mechanics, cosmology, you know a bit here, virtual reality. Virtual reality is one of those frightening things. I remember my daughter was playing with Super Mario. Remember Super Mario? Right? Look what they do now, 20, 30 years later. Virtual reality is going to be so real In fact, it's almost there that you won't be able to tell the difference between real and virtual. It's going to be so real that it may become more real than the real. It sounds weird. Artificial intelligence. They're working. There is projects going around the world, the Blue Brain Project in, I think, in Geneva, in America, where they're actually trying to map the brain. As each one of you is sitting here, each one of you is sitting here, I'm going to tell you something. You're the most brilliant, absolutely genius intelligence that exists. You know everything about the cosmos. And you say, what the hell is talking about? It is true, except that you, for some reason, are not conscious of it. As you're sitting here, as you're just looking at me, or I'll use myself as an example. I like moving around, do this stuff, with my hands. I remember giving a talk to people from Helsinki. You ever meet people from Helsinki? They once told me, but why do you move so much? They talk like this, after the lecture. You got Italian blood. But I'm moving. And you think, it's moving, so what? Every gesture, a very simple gesture, this, requires perhaps 2 or 3 billion, if not trillions, of calculations are being done in here. It works out the motions, the instructions, mathematically, what it needs to tell the muscles, and the bones understand it, and the muscles understand it, and the nerves understand it, till finally the motion is made so perfectly. Wait a minute, it's doing trillions of calculations per second, instantaneously. I'm doing it. Who's doing it? Me? My brain? Who's doing it? Okay, I'll stop, and I tell my brain, I'm going to order my brain, move my hands. And yet, it's fine. We've got to wake up to this amazing fact that here is the most amazing thing, and it isn't just me moving my hands. I mean, you can imagine a ballet dancer or a tennis player, or choreographers, the motions that are done instantaneously, and the memory to do the motion. You see those ballet dancers and or a violin player playing a whole symphony by memory, and every single note and motion and pressure, and it's exactly, precisely. I met one of those, and I said, how do you do it? He said, I don't know, I've learned it, but what happens in there? He doesn't know. It's like riding a bicycle. So you always remember riding a bicycle. But riding a bicycle requires the knowledge of gravity, the pressure, the sensation of your body, the muscles giving instructions. All this is happening and being processed. You have 100 billion neurons linked to synapses, they estimate 100 to 300 trillion of them. That's the network in there. It looks like a mush when you see it, it's a lump of flesh. When you go down with microscopic electron microscopes, you can begin to see a bit, but it looks like if you can imagine the whole of New York being a spaghetti plate, and you're trying, with sauce all around it, and you're trying to understand it. It's confusion with neuroscientists. I mean, this thing, this lump in there is a super processor. One of the things that astounded me when I got more and more updated is just by looking at you. I know this is my daughter, I hope. And this is my friend George, Commander, and here is my friend Maria, Pia. How do I know this? I mean, have you ever thought of it? Because what I'm receiving, what I'm seeing, in fact, is reflected light, which is particles, photons, coming at the speed of light, in super nanoseconds, affecting photosensitive cells. There is billions of them in my eye, converting this information, sending it to my brain, and my brain instantaneously knows this is George. Think of it. I know this is George, this is a chair, this is a computer, this is a rug. You ask a computer expert if a computer can do this. It can't do one thing. We can instruct it to recognize a dog or a plate. You turn the dog a little bit sideways, it doesn't see it anymore. You've got to give him a zillion motions of this dog for him to recognize every motion. You know when a dog is there, even if he walks or if he jumps, you know it's still the same dog. How does this thing work? You have somebody here in England, sorry, I'm overdoing this thing, they're going to tell me I'm supposed to talk about pyramids, right? I'm priming you because I'm saying we can't talk anymore about the past. We can't talk anymore about the ancient Egyptians. We can't talk about our universe anymore because we have to update ourselves, and when we update ourselves with what is going on now, not only realize what is going on here, but here is the weird thing. Here's the weird thing. Mars, Earth, the planets, the galaxies, the stars, the chair, the computer, the piano is made of the same stuff, atoms and subatomic particles. We know this for sure, there is no doubt. But here is the weird thing. Anything above atoms, the big stuff, is you, me, the chair, everything. You know, you see it, and you say, if I take this chair and I throw it up, it's going to fall down. And Colin is sitting here, and he's sitting here. He's not sitting there, right? He's not there, or on another planet. But the problem is when we examine the subatomic world, these little particles do not behave at all as we'd expect them to behave. They don't. It's a fact. The reason you have cell phones, and I have this laser beam, and there is a picture on the screen here, and you speak on Skype, is because of quantum mechanics. Now, I'm not going to go into, but I will tell you that nobody understands it. You go on the internet, you find famous phrases like Richard Feynman, one of the founders, who says, if somebody says he understands quantum mechanics, he's either crazy or he's lying. Nobody gets it. Because it's totally counterintuitive. Why? Because it tells us that particles can be like waves. Particles can be many things. It can be one particle or 10 particles. Well, how can one thing become two things or an infinite number of things? We don't get it. But they do. They do because experiment has proved this. So, my God. But wait a minute. Hold it. We're made of atoms. So our fundamental stuff, our brain is made of atoms, behaves in a totally counterintuitive way. Totally. These little things that are whirling in there can be anywhere in the universe at the same time. They could be you somewhere else. It sounds strange, but this is the physics that is coming out and has been going on for 40 years, but yet, you're looking at me in a strange way, some of you, it is true. Check it out. Things like the double-slit experiments, I'm sure, and the Schroeder's cat and all this. All right? Check it out. So what do? It's something we discovered, but it's always been here. And is it possible to somehow connect and see what's going on in here? Well, you've got a character in this. There's many of them around the world. They found about 100 of them. They call them super genius savants. You know this Daniel Tammet. You know Daniel Tammet? No? Who's heard of Daniel Tammet? My God. Okay. He's a 35, I think he's close to his 40s, young man. British. Suffers from autism. Epileptic fits when he was young. And then surprised everybody. He could recite by memory 25,000 decimal points of the value of pi. 3.142, we can go up to 3.1. My brother's going to say, wait a minute, no, it's 3.14159. And 27, okay, somebody got it up to. But go to 25,000, it takes you apparently 24 hours to recite them. And then he puzzled them because somebody would say 156 multiplied by 347. And you go, give the answer. Then they try them more. Okay, let's try 1,348,000 multiplied by 69 divided by 47. And you go, poing, gets the answer. And they say, how do you do it? He says, no. It's true. Check him out. He goes around the world, this guy. They found another one. You've seen the film Rayman. Come on. Yeah. everybody should see The Man Who Knew Eternity of Ramanujan. This, huh? The Man Who Knew Infinity, sorry. Man Who Knew Infinity. Chandra, where is Chandra? Chandra's father studied under G.H. Hardy, who is played by Jeremy Irons in the film. Ramanujan was a clerk in India, and he sends his mathematical formulas. He's playing with prime numbers. You're going to hear about prime numbers now. Playing with prime numbers. Prime numbers are something bizarre. Let me test you a bit. If I say 121, my brothers, please don't answer Jean-Paul, because he's dying to give the answer. If you take 121, and I say factorize it. Now let me tell you factorize it. You say, what can I break it down so I multiply it by certain numbers to get 121? And, well, I can tell you immediately, it's 11 times 11. But when you factorize any number, which is not a prime number. Now, what is a prime number? A prime number is a number that can't be divided by only itself. Like 2, like 3, like 5, like 7, like 11. It goes on, and it goes infinitely. However, when you take a non-prime number, a full number, like 121, which you can divide it by 11, whenever you divide a prime number, a number by factorize it, you break it down, 11 times 11, what you get is 2 prime numbers, 11 times 11. Or a multiple, you always get prime numbers. We don't know why we get this. But I defy you, take this at home, try and factorize, let's see, 503. I can tell you that you'll spend about 5 days and you probably won't get it. Because if you try and do it, there's a computer program to do it, and don't cheat. But you try and do it by hand, you try and say multiply this by that and by that. It will take you a week if you're good at it. Ask Daniel Tammet, can you tell me the factorization of 503 or 1,359? And he goes, he gives you the numbers. And he doesn't know how to do it. He tells you, I dream prime numbers. And he loves prime numbers. He dreams them. Like Ramanujan. Ramanujan kept insisting to G.H. Hardy, it comes from a goddess. Nobody believed him. He said, look, I'm telling you, it comes from me. He worked out the most complicated formulas, which today, I'm talking about the 1930s here, 20s. Today we're using his formulas to solve black hole theories. Is that right, Chandra? I don't know where Chandra is. Chandra. Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, as they say. Working out black holes. There's another one. Book came out about 2 years ago. Wolfgang Pauli, the Nobel Prize winner physicist, one of the founders of quantum mechanics. He was disturbed because he kept getting dreams about his formulas. He won the Nobel Prize of physics. He actually went to see Carl Jung, and they worked together for 26 years. And because of this union, Carl Jung came with the universal conscious and synchronicity and all these strange things that we think is hocus pocus, but it doesn't seem to be. We live in a very strange, mysterious universe, and now we know it. And better still, it isn't just this weird quantum world and our mind, and neurologists are coming and neuroscientists are telling us the most extraordinary thing about our mind, but out there is a universe. And again, I need to be corrected if I'm wrong. We're dealing with something so enormous. The furthest galaxy from us. Now, he told you about light years. If light would come from the sun, as it comes from the sun, it takes 8 minutes, is that right? About 8 minutes to arrive here. 8 minutes. A light year, you can imagine the distance. The furthest galaxy is about 13.4 billion light years. Can't imagine. Light traveling for 13.4 billion years to reach us. They found it a few months ago, no? It's spooky.
Galaxies, Robert, it's updated last week.
Further one.
To 3 trillion, 5 trillion.
You're joking.
5 trillion.
It's totally... We can't imagine these distances. We can't. And the numbers, they keep increasing every day. The latest estimate is our own galaxy, which is among, as very conservatively, 100 billion other universes, galaxies. And our galaxy alone has a very conservative number of 100 billion stars, of which already we found one that has 7 planets. So if we extrapolate, apparently the numbers of possible planets on our galaxy alone is 10 to the 27, I don't know, but incredible numbers. The odds are extremely high now. It isn't just, oh, he's talking about ET and he's talking about extraterrestrials. And the odds are very, very high that not only we're not alone, but the big question which Chandra raises here is if the universe, if panspermia has been seeding, it's like throwing seeds all over a field, this galaxy must be teeming with life. And if it's older than us, look what we've done in hardly 10,000 years of civilization, from dragging our women with hair out of a cave and beating the damn shit out of them, excuse my French. Here we are, putting people on the moon. We're going to Mars soon. We know what the universe is. We can measure the universe. It's amazing that you're in a generation where we know that we are in the universe, and that there are planets out there, and that there are galaxies, and soon to find life. We're here. It's amazing what we've done in just 10,000 years. From this hairy caveman to us. Imagine what we will do in 100 years. Look at what happened with computers, power. You remember I remember in the 40s, when we came to England in the 60s, nobody talked about computers. It's only NASA who had one, and it was the size of this room. The computers that you play on your little iPads and iPhones and all this has something like 30,000 times the power of what NASA had in the 60s when they sent people on the moon. You have 30,000 more power on these things. There are computers now in China and America, supercomputers, that can do 4,000 quadrillion calculations a second. But they still can't do what we do. They still can't think. They still can't feel. And more than likely won't. But what I'm trying to say is we're moving so fast exponentially now. It took us thousands of years to sort of invent the wheel, and then a bit of iron, and then we came to the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, and then the Wright brothers with the little machines, and we have now super jets, and we'll have people traveling to the stars very soon. This is the world we're in. And we did it in 10,000 years. What if we wait for another 1,000 years? What will be on this planet? Now, you should read these futuristic books by scientists. It's frightening. We'll be able to send people to the stars very soon. We won't send you physically. We can download your brain. We can download you and put you on an artificial and put you on a laser beam and send you to the stars. No, better still. They think that we'll be able to use wormholes and travel instantaneously. In fact, we know from quantum mechanics that there is entanglement. This is the weirdest thing about quantum mechanics, apart from being multiple and you can be, is that two atoms, two subatomic particles like light photons or electrons, get close and they get entangled, they say. Don't ask me how, and they spin. And if you take one and put it on the other side of the universe, if one spins to the left, the other one spins to the right. No forces between them. Instantaneously. We have no idea how this is done. It happens, and they're actually demonstrated in tests. They're doing this in the island of Tenerife at the moment. They've actually sent an electron that is entangled from Las Palmas to the nearest island, I forgot the name, 147 distance, and they moved one and the other moves. They don't know how it's done. All they know it's doing it. There's a famous phrase from physicists today. It says, when you're going to teach quantum mechanics, the first thing you tell your students is calculate and shut up. Don't try and understand it, because you go crazy. You go crazy when you start thinking what these things do, the subatomic parts of which everything is made. Having said this, we have to be open. Because all this has always existed. can we access here? Can I know the calculations that are being done here? Can I know the laws of gravity that my brain knows when it tells me how to move or hold a racket? Can I know all this? Can I reach it? Can we be like a bit like this savant Tammet, that he can calculate? Is there a way to access it? Well, they think we will know it. How? Because we will be able to plan, to map the human brain, map it completely, put it on an artificial machine, a computer. We can't do it today. Let me tell you that if today the technology exists, the science exists, except, here it is, to build a artificial brain, a computer if you like, it will be the size of New York. It will require a river to cool it, and it will require a power plant to generate it. And you run this machine up there with 400 calories, which is about 4 spoons of sugar every day. It's a wonderful thing. You're running the most extraordinary processor with 4 spoons of sugar a day. Or if you don't take sugar, whatever you take, that produces 400 calories. It's extraordinary. We don't have it yet. We know how to build it, but we'll have to build it. We don't have the funds. We don't have the technology. But one day we will. One day we will. We'll have to build a computer that has at least 8 billion to 100 billion transistors. The most powerful available on the market, the microchip that you're using, that you put on your cameras, contains about the big ones, the expensive one, about 6 to 7 billion. We have to multiply this by 10 to reach what this is, and then to be able to program it. To devise a program that runs the same way. We have no idea yet how to do it. Neurologists will tell you this. But we will be able to do it once we map the brain. Now, we're at the threshold of all this. And if we can do this, here's the big question, then others can do it too. Others elsewhere who are much more advanced than us, this will be kid stuff. A little 5-year-old computer geek on another galaxy that is billions of years older will think this is child's play. This is what we have to consider. As much as it sounds like science fiction is meeting science today. Better still, it's meeting spirituality. Why? Because there are experiments that are done with subatomic particles that they happen. It's as if these particles think. Matter thinks. The stuff you're made of, these little things that whiz around you, decide whether they... And the strange thing is when you observe them, they collapse. It's called a wave collapse. So if you don't watch them, they're doing all sorts of wonderful things. They're going all over the universe. You watch them, they collapse. They become one thing. How is this possible? We have no idea. And that is how your telephone works, your computer works. This is the world we're in. And I had no idea. But now that I think of it in those terms, I think, my God. And there's many what-ifs. We call this in our book, hence why I'm writing a book with Professor Chandra, I'm very honored. We call this intelligent speculation. We can now speculate intelligent, and it's fun, because we can look at the past again. So I'm going to take you to the past. Here is the theory. Very fast, I don't want to do it. Pyramids look like 3 stars. The pyramid tells us this. I proposed the correlation theory. Then I proposed the famous 10,000 BC theory where the Sphinx lines up. I'll go fast here. I want to show you. Oh, there it is. And this is a picture that kind of puts it all together. We have a monument scheme on the ground, 3 pyramids aligning to 3 stars, and a sphinx, a lion sphinx, looking at another constellation. The odds are 1,000,000 to 1 that we're looking at coincidence. I'm showing you this picture because when it was shown in Egypt at the Hotel Mela House 2 years ago by my friend Graham Hancock, you might have seen this on the YouTube. If you haven't, have a look. Who happened to walk in the room is the man with the hat. You seen him? And he lost it. Like he lost it, really. You should really see this YouTube. He went absolutely berserk. They had to cancel the conference. That's how biased and resistant people are to new ideas. It is strange, but true. There is a resistance to change consensus, status quo, belief systems. And the world progresses and changes, paradigm changes, when somebody comes and makes a lot of noise, but you've got to win at this game. Having said this, I'm now going to take you on an adventure in the Great Pyramid, and we're going to do what I call the pigeon, the coincidence pigeons. All right? I was giving a talk in Milan around just before Christmas. Let me get out of here. Has any of you been to Milan? Yes. You have. There's a very famous piazza called the Piazza del Duomo. It's like a bit, well, there's a cathedral, a wonderful cathedral, but it's a bit like Trafalgar. There's all these pigeons. And, you throw bits of bread and they come. And then I was giving a talk in a bookshop. And then I thought, I'm going to play what is known as a mind experiment. Einstein did that. I'm not Einstein. But it's fun to have an experiment, theoretical, hypothetical. And I said, what if I am here and I'm talking to you and suddenly a pigeon comes on my pulpit? And they said, there's a lot of pigeons out there, and we've never seen this before, but it's one of those things. It's a coincidence. And then I said, what if another pigeon comes? And one is white, one is black. Some kept saying it's coincidence. They begin to sort of wonder what's going on. I'm sure they were thinking, he's trained pigeons, or they're fake pigeons. And then I said, what if a third one? White, black, white. Fourth, black, white. By the time I reached 7, hypothetically, there was only one person who kept saying coincidence. If something like this happens, at what point do you stop saying coincidence? Well, Egyptologists will require about 15, and they still say coincidence. There are things that happen in your life. I'm sure you all have this with numbers and dates and... No? And you think, it's a coincidence. As I was driving here, strange enough, I have a tendency to look at the dials of a car because somehow the numbers appear that seems to talk to me. And my number is 503, that's why I asked you to factorize. I can tell you that factorizing 103 gives you a certain number, and in the series of prime numbers, so 2 is the first prime number, so 2 is first, 3 is the second prime number, 3 is second, and so on and on. Well, in the series, 503 is the 96th prime number. I'm looking at the dial, and it comes 503 and 96. And I think, what are the odds? And I say, synchronicity, coincidence, luck, forget about it. But what are these words? They're words. Right? Come on, you've all had numbers. Come on. 11. 11 is the favorite one, no? Or 11. You look at your watch and say, strange, it's always telling me 12, 12, or 11, 11, or 15. No? Or signs, symbols. There seems to be a language going on. It's so chaotic. It's crazy, and yet you can't totally dismiss them. Hence, Jung and all this. Looking at the possibility that they are not coincidence. Well, I'm going to take you along with pigeons now. I'm going to show you pigeon and pigeon. I'm curious to see at what pigeon you stop saying coincidence. So here we are. We start with the first one. Let me open the image. There's a very nice saying here, which my brother will like, I'm sure. It is from Galileo. Everybody should read this because basically you're living in a universe that is not only constructed, it expresses itself in everything with what we call mathematics. I know all of us, I don't like mathematics unless I count my money, that's all right, I like to. But mathematics is one of those things we don't like, right? I reached A levels by hook or by crook and managed to get a tiny pass. But it's true. It's made of figures and circles and Fibonacci series and golden numbers. It's a kind of language, and if you don't understand this, if you don't listen to it, what happened? I'll have to do this manually. Not easy, it's not. I'm stuck. Help. Excuse me, for some reason it's not working. Ah, yes. I should put it on pause. There we are. All right, so we're going to try and... Now, I better tell you, we're entering the world of speculation here. But I feel comfortable enough to speculate in this direction because, like I said, I've updated myself, and I think we should remove this taboo. There was 15 years ago, you wouldn't have caught me dead speaking about extraterrestrials or life abroad. I wouldn't speak to it. I mean, there was this so-called A phrase that you never mentioned, Atlantis or E.T. You know, the minute you said this, that's it. You were branded, like in Greece, you were branded a fool. Like, you didn't. And I avoided it, and my colleagues like Hancock avoided it. And I remember talking to the Mr. of E.T., Eric von Daniken. Those who are my age will remember. And when I went to see him many, many years ago, I just published The Orion Mystery, he said, "Don't speak about E.T. Leave it to me." Well, I didn't. But I was not being honest because something bothered me. I was seeing something that bothered me. And I knew what I was seeing, and I tried to fit it within the context, the ethos of what Egyptologists would accept, and they didn't. I mean, you see what I mean? Basically, I said 3 pyramids look like 3 stars because the pyramid text says this, and there are shafts pointing to stars, and they went bananas. Let alone if I suggested that perhaps there had been a contact, or perhaps there was a super genius there, or perhaps they knew what we know today. I would have been thrown, that's it, in disgust. Well, let it be so, because it's no more the case when you talk to people who are in the business, scientists, updated. We need to remove this taboo. So I'm coming out, all right? No, I'm not gay. I'm coming out with E.T., all right? I am not saying I'm going to speculate of a possibility that is on the table. We must put it, and you'll see why. And here are the pigeons. Lots of them. And here is the necropolis. Well, you know now there's 3 pyramids, 2 of the same size, and so forth. And we come to the first thing. It is universally accepted, Egyptologists, archaeologists, no problem, that the pyramid is built or was designed, I think, because it's a big word now, designed. A project, I'm a construction engineer, my brother is an architect. Construction engineer and architects don't get along. We love each other, but whenever we have a discussion, it's bad. We think architects are ninnies, and they think we're sort of people playing with bricks. But designing a project is the essential part. Somebody has to invent it, put it on paper, have a blueprint, and then you give it to people like me, and we build it. So I'm talking about a designed project. There's been too much talk about how the pyramid was built. You know, how they build the stone, now they take the stones and build theories, and they pull them up, and it's slaves, and it's not slaves, and this, and... But who designed this damn thing? Who designed it? Well, they tell us King Cheops calls some architect and says, design me my tomb. They said, design me a tomb. I remember doing this on a phone conversation with Rudolf Gantenbrink, the man who discovered the door, and we played, I was King Cheops and he was the architect. No, he was King Cheops, sorry. And he said, I said, okay, what do you want? And he said, well, I want a pyramid 146 meters high, and I want it to be perfectly orientated to the cardinal directions within 5% of a single degree. And I want to have chambers in it made of granite, and I want the blocks to be 70 tons. But that time, I think he's crazy, even today. And when he tells me I want to put shafts, cutting through and build it, forget it. It's like building a chimney across your house at an angle, and then forget it. And yet he's designed it. And the curious thing, here's the first one. When you look at the dimension of the pyramid, we know for a fact they use a unit which we call the royal cubit. It is precisely, Jean-Paul, it is precisely 0.5236, but he's going to shout. You can refine this 0.52359. All right, it's good enough on 4 decimal points. It is that dimension in terms of meter. It's about that size. Now Egyptologists tell us, we think we know how they found it. They took the elbow, and they said this is distance, and we're going to call it the royal cubit. And then we're going to take 4 fingers, and we're going to say there's 28 of them here, and that's our unit. Well, sounds reasonable, until you start examining this unit, because it does very strange things. Very strange things indeed. Well, the first thing it does is it produces a pyramid that is 280 of these units, royal cubits, high, and 440 of a base. Well, I won't go through the mathematics, but it gives us the height is to its perimeter, square perimeter, the same as a radius is to its circle. In other words, that the pyramid contains the universal constant pi. Now they tell us unanimously, Egyptians not know pi. They couldn't have known pi because the Greeks found it. It's supposed to be Aristotle, I think. Archimedes. Well, it's there. But they say it's coincidence. It's one of those things. The architect said, give it 280, 480. And okay. Coincidence. First pigeon comes on the table and say, it's a coincidence pigeon. You see, by the way, I've factorized it for you, but just by curiosity. See here? This is a number that if you factorize it, you get 2 times 2 times 2 times 5 times 11. All these are prime numbers, and if you multiply 2 times 12, you get 440. All right? Now, well, I'll skip that one. It represents the idea of what we call squaring the circle. Whoever designed this monument, by coincidence or deliberation, intended the base to represent mathematically a circle. We got a circle. And then, I don't want to go through this because I went fast, but this circle, if you put across east-west and north-south, is perfectly aligned to the cardinal direction, astronomical cardinal direction, to 5% of a single degree. By coincidence or not, but that's what we have. Now, why would you want to have a circle with the precision of direction? If you blow this building away, and if you imagine you're in the middle of the desert or the ocean, and you look around, what you see is the horizon. Looks like a circle. And due east, due south, due north. So it seems to represent the idea of something to do with the earth, if it is not a coincidence. But we throw it away as a coincidence. Push the pigeon and let it fly. Now here is the strange thing. You remember we said that this royal cubit is 0.5236 of a meter. It happens to be, it's a coincidence. Well, it doesn't matter, it's that dimension. Well, if you take a circle now, we talked about the circle, and here's the weird thing. You divide that circle by 6. You put a hexagon in it. You divide the arc by 6. Lo and behold, if the circle has a diameter of any unit, 1, kilometer, a meter, a foot, a fathom, a nautical mile. As long as it's 1, the circumference divides in 6 parts of 0.5236. Strange coincidence, because I design you a pyramid that has the base as a circle, and then you say, wait a minute, that's strange. When I divide that circle into 6 parts, I get that figure, this royal cubit figure. Coincidence number, what is it? 3, well, I skipped 1. We've got 3 pigeons now annoying us. But we still think, okay, yeah, so what? The pyramid, contrary to popular belief, does not have, in fact, a square base. It doesn't have 4 sides. It actually has 8 sides. It was found in 1926 by a British pilot, of all people, flying over and taking a picture on the equinox of spring, which is 21st of March, very soon. And when you take a picture at sunset or sunrise above the pyramid on that day, you get a shadow that reveals a small indent. We call this the concavity. And now you think, wait a minute, circle, directions, the pigeon of the divided by 6, and now I have 8 sides, and it performs these 8 sides only when you see them at the equinox. Astronomy again. Now, here is the big problem. Designing a pyramid is child's play, the outside. I mean, any kid, you say, have a base, a height, you design it, and no problem. Design a pyramid with a concavity, and you have a problem. It multiplies the complications of how to design it. And the problem is that when you design it and you arrive at the top, it doesn't have a top. You can't design a pyramid with an apex with 8 sides. It doesn't work. You end up with a star at the top. It's a fact, a geometrical fact. You end up with a platform that looks like a star, a 4-pointed star, by the way, and then if you extend the edges, you get, and this is a new phrase we're calling, a virtual space. You can imagine it at the top, but it doesn't exist. It's a virtual space. The Great Pyramid does not have a top. You can go there and see it or have pictures. It does not have a top. Why would he want to do that? Well, here comes a genius brother of mine who says, if it's a virtual space, let's imagine that we can imagine something virtual. Right? He can draw it. He extended it, drew it. And what he found, and I'm not going through the mathematics, is you get a kind of virtual little pyramid at the top. And if you try and fit a globe in it, right, here is the weird thing. You get a globe of exactly within 4 decimal places, or 5, is it, of 1 meter diameter. Now that's annoying for 2 reasons. Because we said before, if you have a circle of 1 meter diameter, it produces this royal cubit, exactly, divided by 6. The diameter is 1, but now in meters. So it gives us the exact dimension. If I have a meter on the ground and I draw a circle using that as a diameter and I divide by 6, I get the royal cubit. That's it. And it seems to be right at the top. But there is a big, big problem with this. The meter was not discovered till 1793. The French worked out the meter. How did they do it? In a nutshell, they measured the distance between Dunkirk, if I remember well, to Barcelona. It's about 1,000 kilometers. And they knew the distance. They knew the curvature, so they had an arc. And all they had to do was multiply this arc by 360, and they found out that they could get the circumference, the polar circumference of the Earth, and they came out with 40,000 kilometers. Well, they came out with a figure, and they said, we'll take this figure, a quarter arc from equator to pole, and we divide it by 10 millionth, and we get a number, and that is the meter. They call it le mètre. That is the meter. So, not only it was discovered in 1793, or they did the exercise in 73, but you need to know the circumference of the planet and measure it and get it accurate, or accurate enough to get this value. So it's impossible. It is historically impossible for them to know the meter. Yes, you get the cart before the horse, or the egg before the chicken, right? But wait a minute. Why should it be like that? Why could it not be that it was discovered before? It's one of these blockages we have. If the French did it, why couldn't the others do it? I mean, the French are not very special, are they? They're good, but because they didn't have GPSs. They had some optical instruments. In fact, they measured very crudely with what we call a traverse, and they used chains and things. But they got it kind of. It's actually, let me get this right, 40,075 kilometers, right? Sorry. Somebody correct me, please. They got it almost bang on. These guys not only knew the meter, which is impossible, but they relayed the meter to their unit. There's a relationship, whether we like it or not, between their unit, that pyramid, and the impossibility of knowing the circumference of the planet. It's there. The question is, do we throw it away and say it's coincidence? Okay, 4 pigeons. That's basta. 4 pigeons. We don't want to bother our lives. It's enough. We have enough problems at home, right? And start thinking about pigeons and things. And well, I'm not going to let you alone here. In order, if you take the base measurement of the pyramid, we said it's 440, right? You remember 440 of the units? And you convert this into meters, and you get the whole pyramid. It's exactly 121.53 meters the square, or the circle, if you convert it to a circle. It amounts to 1,843.06 meters. It is exactly 1 minute of a degree measured at the equator. Exactly. Check it on your internet. And more annoyingly comes another unit, because 1,843 is precisely the British nautical mile measured at the equator. Now wait a minute. British nautical mile was discovered in 1628, around that time. Right? We have a problem here. Coincidence. Let's throw it away. Because we have an historical problem here. People know what they should know, and they know it before they should know it. We have a quantum mechanics problem. All right? Do you want more pigeons, or how are we with pigeons now? Who is saying coincidence so far? Now, come on, there must be one or two. We only looked at the outside. Now let's go inside this thing. Anybody who's been in there must know. It is a weird, weird experience. It simply does not fit what we expect to find in a tomb. It's strange. It's got galleries and strange corridors, and you have to kneel down, and you come out in a gallery, and then you kneel out again, and you have a chamber. I'll show you that, the Queen's chamber. Let me explain those who haven't been. Who has been inside? Now, about 6, 7 of you have to be. You have to be one day. All right, let me go very fast here. You enter from the north, you go down. You have to crouch, by the way. It's very, very shallow. You climb, you reach the junction of what we call the Grand Gallery. You go straight, you enter the Queen's chamber. And then you go back, you climb the Grand Gallery. It's 49 meters long. 49 meters long, it's 9 meters high. It's frightening. It's like you can put a cathedral in there. Anyway, you climb, you enter what we call a small little chamber here, and then you enter the famous King's chamber. This is a weird one. Weird one. Whoever's been in the King's chamber knows what I'm talking about. It's made of blocks of granite. Now, granite cannot be found in the area. It has to be brought in from 900 kilometers away from Aswan. And that's when the architect says, I want granite from Aswan. And the builder says, Mr. George says here, why? I mean, it works with limestone, because it's pyramid with limestone. We already built a chamber taking more of the weight with limestone. Granite. And you want, wait a minute, you want to have a span of the ceiling. Look at the ceiling here. I estimate it to be what, 7 meters, George? I don't know, 7 meters? You're more or less in the king's chamber, 7 meters span. And I want this span to be of granite. So wait a minute. They want to break. So well, make them big enough. There is 9 beams in the king's chamber. Each weighs 70 tons, approximately. Now let me tell you what 70 tons is. I don't know what cars you drive. I'm driving this Skoda thing which I rented. If you take 150 of these Skodas and you squish them up, you get one of these beams. There's 9 of them. And they brought them, and if you see them now, they're perfectly cut. And that's not enough. Jean-Paul will talk about this. There is, in fact, 5 more ceilings on top, which were only discovered in 1837. So they don't want to impress us that they could do one of them. They have 43 of these damn beams that they brought over. And by the way, we'll talk later. A German scientist has been there. There's been a lot of controversy last year, 2 years ago. I don't know if you followed it, the so-called cartouche scandal, because he went with a very flimsy permit and he scraped some of the dark findings. There's dark marks on these beams. And he scraped some of it and he had it tested in Dresden at the laboratory, and they found iron. Not supposed to know iron. We have another problem. They know measurements, they have iron, they know the circumference of the... No, it's crazy. Can't take it. Coincidence, they say. Forget it. Go home. It's a tomb. It doesn't look like a tomb. The architect is not designing a tomb. In fact, he's not even telling us why it is done. He's expecting us. That's the impression you get. He's expecting us to read it with mathematics. He's expecting us to read it with astronomy. He's expecting us to understand prime numbers, as you will see, and universal constants. He's talking the language of the universe. He's talking like you would be talking one day, or your kids, or your grandchildren, to some alien people who come here, because they won't understand English. They won't understand Chinese, but they understand the same universal language. They will tell you this direction, this coordinates, this, that, and you can talk language. Once they understand the symbols used for mathematics. Am I running out of time?
Yep. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to leave a bit for my brother. I'm going to go very fast on the pigeons here. Is it too many pigeons for you? Am I boring you here? Huh?
No.
The pyramid, you remember when you were kids and you were doing drawings and you have these squares and you draw lines, and we do have, it's called a grid plan. That's how architects in the old days used to do it. The pyramid is built on a grid of 11 by 11. 2 prime numbers that keep cropping up in this monument, and you will see. It's odd. Why would he choose 11 by 11 royal cubits? Why? This was fun. This is very serious work. This was found by Rudolf Gantenbrink, who reverse designed the pyramid using how do you call this program? AutoCAD. And he found, to his surprise, that the principal points, you see these points, red and so forth, are all in places which are multiples of 11. He put things... Now you try and design this, believe me, many have tried, architects, and they get muddled. They begin to think we're going to need a computer here because we need to... It sounds easy when you look at it, until you realize that you have to fit this in with prime numbers and... Okay. Whoops. Oh my God, the pigeon. Here is the weird thing. The shafts of the king's chamber. I didn't go through this, but one, I think I did. One points to Orion's belt, the other one points to the circumpolar star. They emerge at a certain point, almost equal position, and when you study their geometry, they produce 121. Remember what we said, 121, you factorize, you get 11 by 11. This damn 11 is coming over and over. He seems to be obsessed with 11. We have to ask the question, why is he doing that? What kind of brain is here? I leave this because Jean-Paul will do it in 2 minutes. Okay, and I move. Here is a chamber. You remember this little door? You remember it? They still haven't. They've made a drill and they found that there was another block. There is a space between 2 doors. They haven't opened the second one. It's been now 20 years. Now, how uninterested are Egyptologists? It's the most extraordinary monument, and there is a door on the north side and the south side at the end of shafts. I mean, hey, if I was the head of antiquities, I'd have it opened a long time ago. We want to know. Well, they managed to take pictures. And they found, here it is, the weird one. 3 signs. Nobody could understand them. There comes an Italian mathematician who knows hieroglyphs. And he said, easy. It's 1, 20, and 100. 121. What is going on here? He's talking primes. Primes. You remember the film Contact? No, who's? Come on, you've seen the film Contact. Carl Sagan's Contact. Jolly Foster. They haven't seen much, huh? Alignments. Stars. This thing is talking stars. It's talking prime numbers. It's talking universal constants. It's anonymous. We don't know how they build it. We don't know why they build it. And we don't ask the question. We want to dismiss it as... Now, I'm not going to say ET. I'm going to say we have to look at the possibility of something rather odd going here. And we may be dealing with something that is totally outside the realm of classical archaeology. It may be a leftover, a visiting card, a message, lost civilization. We don't know. Honestly, I don't know. But we have to do it. It's ridiculous that we have this legacy from an unknown source. Okay. Quintessence 11. Here is another one. And I think Chandra will correct me if I say anything wrong. They now think, now here is you, me, remember we talked about you being made of subatomic particles and all this stuff. The stuff that you are made of is star stuff. There's a star that exploded somewhere and burst out its material. The original material of the cosmos was helium and hydrogen and maybe a fraction of lithium, I think, or barium. Eventually galaxies formed, stars formed. Stars began to be so big that gravity pulled them inwards. The pressure, the heat cooked these basic elementary atomic elements and formed the heavy elements and exploded, spewed out seeds. Some reach us here. Took 4.5 billion years for you and I to be here. We're made of this stuff. Now, here's the weird one. They're pointing there. Pyramid is pointing there. And we think that it is there, this region, the M42 nebula, the nursery of stars, they call it. It's a nice word. That's where stars are born. That is where our material that we're made of was born, cooked in the cauldron, in the bowels of a star. Isn't that nice to think of it? I was going to say we recycled stars, but that doesn't sound too nice. I'm not going to go to more because I can go up to 25 pigeons here, but I hope I've done enough to make you at least speculate intelligently that this is worth pursuing. And I'm so proud that we have, for the first time, a scientist of the caliber of Dr. Chandra who said, yes, let's look at this. I mean, I'll write a book with you. We're not saying it is so, but we need to open up the subject properly because they made a mess of it. We have Eric von Daniken, so they're coming down, little green men, and they're going to land. And it's not going to work like this. If there are super intelligent civilization out there, they don't need to come here. They can contact us instantaneously. They can even make us think differently, like we will be able to do in a few 100 years' time. Contact. You remember I don't know if you remember, but the first message they receive is prime numbers. They get a radio message. and then there is bleep, bleep. And then they get bleep, bleep, bleep. 2, and they get bleep, 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 5. Bleep, 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 7, they stop. This is an intelligent message. If you have 5, a series of prime numbers, which is 2, 3, 5, 7, and goes on, you say stop. This is an intelligent message. You cannot have this at random. That's the film, of course, science fiction. You're obliged to consider an intelligent message, whether you like it or not, whether you feel uncomfortable or not. If you get bleeps, this pyramid is bleeping, that's what I'm trying to tell you. And strange enough, in the film, I don't know if one of the strange synchronicities, it stops, suddenly the bleep stops at 101, prime number 101. By that time, they got the message, they understand it's intelligent message, and then comes the plans. You remember they built this machine. Well, here is the funny thing. One of the shafts exits to course 101, prime number, and the other one exits to prime number 103. And these are not just any prime numbers, they're known as Chem prime numbers. You only have odd prime numbers that they follow if you add 2. 101 plus 2 is 103. It's very rare, especially when you get big in the series. This damn pyramid is bleeping with tone. It's emitting some sort of message. Not, of course, with radio waves. It's trying to say something. Okay, I'm at pigeon. I'm not going to go. I was going to go through prime numbers here. And I can go on and on. Believe me, this thing is becoming strange now. Suddenly, architects, engineers, mathematicians are forming a gang. We'll be in America soon. Because we need this. And the more they look at it, the more they say it's getting weirder and weirder. We're finding not just the pi universal constants. We're finding the golden ratio. This was well known. We're even finding what is known as Euler's number. It's in the pyramid. Impossible. This is used to calculate probabilities. It's even used in atomic physics. We're finding constants after constants in this monument. I have to stop because I'm going to leave 10 minutes for my brother to tell you about this because there's something weird about the epicenter of this monument, the chamber. I've gone through all the because there is one of them which is strange, is they displaced the chamber. They didn't put it in the middle. And we have to understand why. Can you come, Paul? Thank you very much. I'm running. It was fun.